to nominations, I know in the past despite my best efforts, we've usually just rushed into nominations. I wanted just to have general conversation about expectations that we want our governing board member president to adhere to. I think that this is a really important conversation. I don't think that, I know like in our policies, the board president is responsible to run these meetings, and that every board member has the authority to add the items to the agenda. But I know that just at the very minimum, there's a ceremonial expectation for a board president when there are certain things that happen, like arson or shootings or tragedies, in addition to the fun things like cutting the ribbons. The board president gets the call first. And I feel that if we're very successful and we continue to be moving forward with our students as we have, and if the Ellis support with promoting our district is successful, there's hopefully going to be a lot more media attention. And I think that the board president should be expected to speak on behalf of the board, not the self, and be very aware of the entire board's ideas and opinions, and speak very factually about the governing board and the district. Are there other expectations you all have for a board president? I'm going to add this out there too, because in the past I know, and I sometimes get carried away and excited about certain issues, and my discussion has been cut off in the past. And I would expect the board president gives everyone an opportunity to make a solid argument. Maybe not go on forever, but make a solid argument on a point before the question is called.
I really do think that the position of board president is to run the meetings first and foremost, and to make sure that the meetings are organized, that we have an agenda, although we certainly give every board member an opportunity to place items on the agenda. And I do think that there are opportunities, certainly, where sometimes letters come and maybe it's sent to Dr. Boyle and they CC the governing board president. So I think it is something where the governing board president needs to make sure that everything is communicated completely to all board members, that we work collaboratively, and certainly there are opportunities for leadership just by being a governing board member. I don't see the governing board presidency position as like the chairmanship of legislative and congressional committees where you can decide what bills you hear and want to kill just because of your position. So.
Any
Those
other
are my thoughts.
Expectations for board chair? Okay. So with that conversation, I'd like to move to the section on nominations. So I'll say this, and would love to hear other nominations and thoughts. But one of the things that I've taken very seriously as a board president and I've committed to is being very responsive to our community, to answering just about as many emails as I can, returning phone calls, and proactively reaching out to parents and community members. And I know, Matt, in particular, I feel like you and I have made that commitment, and it's been very obvious. And I feel like I would trust you to be our president. I would like to nominate Matt Jewett to be our board president for 2013, based on his commitment to listening to parents, being thoughtful and attentive to legislation, attentive to how that might impact our district, and always thinking about the future.
I'm certainly willing to accept it. I don't know if anyone else wants to second it, so that I don't have to second myself.
I'll second it.
Okay.
There is a motion and a second. I want to know if there's any further discussion. Okay. There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you. Take my name.
How about computers?
I will do that too. This thing will hold a charge long enough for me to move it, right? The next agenda item is 3B, reorganization of the governing board, election of governing board clerk for 2013. Are there any nominations? And perhaps, does everyone understand what the clerk's role is? It is mentioned in here. There's a document. Basically, the clerk serves if the president is not available for a given meeting. The clerk will be the one who runs the, I suppose you want yours too. The clerk will run the meeting. They also, let's see if I can find that. There it is. And perform other duties as assigned by the governing board.
I'll just mention to the new board members, I was clerk for 3 years, and in the policy there was something about a clerk's fund, but there really wasn't any money. And we revised the policy. It's basically like to step in the absence of the president. It's really not a bigger role than that.
So I will entertain nominations for clerk. Tiffany has been our clerk this last year. Carl has been the clerk for the 3 previous years.
I'd like to nominate Tiffany Treidel to continue to be the clerk for the Creighton School District Board.
Do I hear a second?
I can second that.
Okay, are there any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, and I'm not required to ask 3 times, are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? As it is in some organizations, then I will call for the question. Tiffany Treidel has been nominated to be governing board clerk. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Congratulations, Tiffany. You are new.
I'm sorry, Ms. Arenas.
I'll
Yes.
answer it either.
Oh, I think I probably repeated what you said. The back of yours still says Tiffany Treidel. So anyway, next agenda item, approval of minutes. First is the November 20th, 2012 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I move the governing board approve the minutes as submitted.
Anyone?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The November 20th minutes are approved as submitted. December 4th, is there a motion?
I move the governing board approve the minutes as submitted.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, the December 4th meeting minutes are approved. Public comments. The white card is the general one, right? The blue is the submission. I have Fula, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the last name, who has submitted a card. I'm sorry, it was a. That is agenda item 8. I apologize. I had that backwards. I will learn this by the end of the year. So we move on then to, and Dr. Boyle, you have a superintendent's report in addition to.
No, I
Lori.
reported.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then item 7 is approval of consent agenda items. Is there a motion?
I move the governing board approve consent agenda items, I move the governing board approve consent items A through E in accordance with policy BEDB-R.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda items have been approved. Educational services, we have a presentation, item 8A, on school safety guidelines and procedures, and I believe that is where, yes, I have that white card. So, Tula, would you please come up and state your...
Is it possible to possibly make a comment after the
Yes,
presentation?
absolutely. Some
Please,
people
thank
prefer
you.
to do that before, some after. So we will go ahead with the presentation.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, in light of the horrible tragedy in Newtown, Connecticut, back in mid-December, and also with governing board request, tonight what we'd like to do is present you with some information about our emergency systems. And basically we would like to take you through kind of the requirements for school emergency plans, issues of campus security, issues of drills and procedures, and inform you on that, as well as some recommendations for some additional steps that we want to take. Tonight we have Mr. Ed Stoltz, who is our Director of Information Systems and Technology. He also serves as our district level incident commander for emergency situations. And then we have two of our principals, Mr. Sean Hannafin from Gateway and Mr. Mike Madison from Monte Vista, who are going to present the information to you. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Stoltz.
Mr. President, Governing Board, thank you for letting us talk to you tonight. Per ARS statute 15341, alpha 32 requires each school site to have emergency response plans that are developed with minimum standards developed jointly by the Department of Education and the Division of Emergency Management within the Department of Emergency and Military Affairs. Also, our policy EBC regulations RA, RB, RC, RD, and RE requires the superintendent to develop and maintain emergency plans and procedures for fire and other threats. Our school sites' emergency plans are currently in place and have purpose, chain of command, fire and building evacuation support, lockdown procedures, bomb and building evacuation, campus evacuation, classroom emergency, both student and teacher, playground emergency, and emergency contacts. Our safety drills and procedures are conducted at each school either once per month for a fire or quarterly for lockdowns. All of our individual site safety plans and campus security were most recently reviewed with principals on Monday, December 7th by the Cabinet.
Oh, I have a quick question. I don't think we had lockdowns when I was in school. Can you quickly explain what that means?
Certainly. You want to do it as a principal?
Sure.
Want to do it as principals?
I think principal's fine, one lockdown.
Good evening, Governing Board members. Thank you for allowing me to speak. Lockdowns for us are practice safety drills that happen monthly. Could be everything from something that happened at Sandy Hook, God forbid, to missing student, to someone being on campus that shouldn't be there, to you name it.
Crime in the neighborhood.
Crime in the neighborhood, helicopter overhead. We've had it for multiple leagues and some identities in this area. I've been given the section on campus security. The first conversation we started to have was about SROs and JPOs in the district. What's listed up there are the 3 schools that have SROs at this point. It's a highly competitive grant that moved that way about 3 years ago. One of our schools in the last year had lost their SRO, which is excellent, so we no longer have one. The other 2 schools, which are Greater and Papago, have SROs. The school that I was at, Kennedy, did have an SRO, and the school that I'm at now, Gateway, does have an SRO. who has been there for 10 years. The SRO that's at Kennedy has been there 2 years. And the one that's at Loma Linda now, I believe, has been there 3 years, but was at Excellencia for 4 years prior to that. So they become people that work with our community, not just police officers on our campus. So we see them as people that teach law-related education. We'll go into that a little bit more.
And Mr. Hannafin, just for people who are not familiar with the term SRO.
School resource officer. Like I said, it's highly competitive. It moved that way 2 to 3 years ago. There was more schools funded for them. At one time, 8 of our 9 schools had SROs. I think Monte Vista was the only one that did not have one at that time because it was a
Mr. Hannafin, the SROs, those are they all retired police officers?
They
or
are
some of them
active duty police officers.
They're active duty police officers.
And they have to actually bid for this position. They have to put in for it. They have to want to work on the school campus. They're placed there because it's someplace they want.
And I know that when I taught 8th grade in the Isaac district, the SROs and the PO played a really big role on our campus. It was a very positive role. But I don't recall, are the SROs, are they armed?
SROs on our site are armed.
Okay.
JPOs are not armed.
Okay, thank you.
And JPO is a juvenile probation officer?
Correct.
Thank you.
Next slide. I want to hear more about the clerk's fund. We kind of talked about the internal issues that we may have. They may happen at any time. Might be one of the reasons we go into a lockdown drill. So one of the things we looked at was volatile students. Not something that happens on a daily basis or even a yearly basis, but could happen. So part of the process that we go through would be response to behavior interventions. The RTI process, you might know it as. What do we do step 1 with the student? What do we do step 2 with the student? What do we do step 3 with the student? So we're working on that problem consistently. We're changing it as we go through. There's a very finite process that we use, but it changes based on the need and who we have to contact on the next step. So the next step for us moves into that progressive discipline. Where does this fall for this child? What's the reason they're here? Is there something that we could do to help support the child or the family a little bit more? And then the threat assessment protocol we use to determine what level we're at. So if it's a student that we think might need help outside of our school, we can contact those agencies and we know who to contact at that time. With adults, we have automatic administrative interventions. So in the 10 years that I've been here, we have had adults that have become a little aggressive. So the first line of defense, obviously, is to call the principal or the assistant principal, have that calming conversation, find out what their needs are while they're upset. If we can't support them in that level, then we move out to the SRO police intervention. I've only had to use that twice in 10 years. At that time, we had an SRO on our campus. SROs are not there every single day for us. They're usually there 4 days a week, so Tuesday through Friday or Monday through Thursday. And then campus restrictions is something that we've used in the past. So if we get to the point where we feel an adult is unsafe for our campus, we actually do not allow them back on campus. They're not allowed within a 40-foot range of the campus unless there's something like a parent-teacher conference. And we always try to work with them. If they're trying to do the best for their child, parent-teacher conferences can be very important, but that's an administrative and a district-level decision. Like we talked about before, SROs and JPOs are something that we do have on the campuses. What the role of the SRO in the future will be, we're not sure. That's to be decided by entities beyond us. We would hope it would continue with law-related education. The SRO that we have actually runs a wake-up club, which once a month they have to spend 4 hours doing community service somewhere in the neighborhood. It could be a leukemia walk, it could be cleaning up graffiti, various neighborhoods, not only our own. All schools at this point do have cameras. I believe 9 is the most any campus have. I could be mistaken on that. They were updated about 2 years ago. They're more high tech than we even had 8 years ago. We try to control access to the school campus as much as possible. We have a certain procedure, and Mike will get into it a little bit more, about what time we close down the school in the morning and what time we open it back up in So we're limiting the access of who's coming on our campus. Each school has set that procedure. That procedure is known by the district office and then by our site rep liaison, which I found out is
Mr. Hannaford,
Yes.
is the Wake Up Club a game prevention program?
It is, correct, for teenagers. And then fences and gates, all of our schools do have fences and gates around them. Some are working on securing the perimeter a little bit more than others already have, but we're consistently doing site analysis to see where people can come in and where they can go out, and what's the best time to have those gates open. It changes on a daily basis based on the need. Obviously, you have parents coming on for presentations, you have adults coming on for Head Start, you have, you name it, it's a school, so at all times we try to keep it to the safest degree.
And I would just add that probably in the last 5 years, you've noticed around our campuses the increase in wrought iron fencing and gating that has gone up across the district. And that's been an effort by Mr. Sukanik to increase that security level. And where we have cyclone fences, that doesn't always work in terms of security for us. So we're continuing to evaluate where we need to make those changes.
And Dr. Wagner, can you make clear what a cyclone fence is?
Yeah, it's the one you can climb.
Gotcha.
And cut.
Chain link. Where I grew up, we called them cyclone fences.
Andy gave us a little more technology.
No, those are the new wrought
Those will be the
iron.
new ones.
Candy cane wrought iron.
Are those ones that pull
Curve
outward at the
out.
end?
Yeah.
And some of the schools at this time do have those. Have to go. Little Linda.
Yeah, I'm wondering, are you planning on putting the wrought iron fences around the whole, like the field too, that's outside the school, or just the
Are you
actual?
speaking for Gateway or?
I'm most familiar with Loma Linda, that has a huge field that the community uses on the weekend.
Long-term, yes. You'll notice at Kennedy, for example, along 27th, that used to be all the chain link fence, and that was just recently replaced with the wrought iron.
So then those parts of the fields that, like the people in the neighborhood use during the weekend will no longer be available for?
Not necessarily true. We still maintain gates and we put in gates. We just had that conversation today about access after hours, and we've tended as a district to allow access after hours so that our facilities could be used by the community. But now we're beginning to have those conversations about how do we do that? How do we do that in a safe way? Because typically we do not have staff available at those times.
So, and what I'm here, I'm speaking as a principal, obviously, an older school, and I was at Kennedy and a newer school, and I'm at Gateway. I'm also speaking as a parent at a community school like EPA. So I'm excited to see that the safety procedures are not only at my site, but every site that we go to.
I'll just feed off of where Sean left off with fences and gates, and at Monte Vista we do our own. He's the guy that asked for help. Anyway, getting back to the gates and so forth, if you notice, I've let in on communication, and we call it chain of command or whatever, but it is something where if I'm there, yes, I know things to do, but what if I'm not there? Well, okay, what is the AP? Then you've got the AP. But what if the AP is not there? And there are times when I'm off campus when there is the AP is on campus. We, as a district, make all attempts to not have that happen. But for short periods of time, it is always a consideration. It has been for many years. But the chain of command needs to go further because with these discussions, as Dr. Wagner just mentioned, after school, when we're doing APTT and we've got multiple classrooms. This is really a new development on this, where you've got multiple classrooms, and not all administrators are on site every night for all those activities. I mean, there may be different people. So that is a developing process of identifying who are these people at the site, but there's always a second place. And then the functions, those people have to know the functions for the people that are there in guarding the procedures, which I'll talk about with lockdowns and fire drills and so forth. But my area really focused on communication. And so starting with the chain of command, the number one connection would be, and there is a simultaneous aspect of this, but the authorities would be notified by me or my designee, or as the situation dictates. There's a current question out there that we're discussing at all sites. Who does contact 911 when you are a teacher in a room or whatever? How does that all play out? It's again, this latest incident is brought to the effect of what is the speediest way to go with communication. But anyway, the authorities contact. We always do that when we have any serious lockdown, obviously. But drills, we contact authorities, fire departments when we do fire drills. We do not contact them at this point in time anyway for lockdown drills. We do contact our district office and so forth when we're doing a drill. But then the district office has, in a serious situation, they have their own protocol that they go through as to who disperses information. Then the parental contact, there's only a few ways. It's very interesting to me, having come from another state, how we contact parents once the day proceeds. I mean, in Montana, it used to be they put it across the radio station, they said, don't send your kids to school, it's snowing today. Well, we get kids coming to school, there's no one way to communicate. So they're coming and we have to deal with them. So there are a few ways we do that. We now have the robocall with the new information system. We can do a robo-email, but basically the idea is you can program it and go, assuming your information is accurate, for phone calls. We have our website to communicate. That's after the fact, obviously. It's that immediate contact that is very difficult to do with parents. It's just a challenge in any situation. And then we have notes to go home, which follows us up into the follow-up. Anytime we have a procedure at a site where there is a legitimate lockdown, we don't notify parents we did a lockdown drill today. What we notify them is if we had an incident, we will put a note. It depends on what time of day that incident might occur. If it's late in the day, you can't pull it off. You can't get the notes out to the kids fast enough to get them, home. So there's some caveats to that, but we always do follow up with any major incident. For example, the incident that occurred right before Christmas, we chose not to disperse a note home at that point because we were unsure of the details. And so we knew our kids were distressed, but as a district principals, we were in communication with each other, talking about what is the appropriate step at that point with regard to our kids. We didn't want our teachers telling the kids about this incident and so forth. We kind of kept kids away from the internet, that sort of thing, to avoid that. That's just a piece of something that might be interesting. So anyway, those are the communication aspects, the flow of command. And then the next slide, which...
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Does the district, and I'm not very, I'm not the best with technology, but do they have the ability to be able to send mass text messages like they do at universities like ASU? And does the district do that? Like, would they be able to do that?
No. The answer is yes, and like I said, we've got this new information system which was just put in place last year, and we have not stretched its capabilities, but it can quickly be done and go from there.
Am I going to answer that quick?
Yeah.
The new information system, correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, if you send out a mass text or make a phone call and it comes back as disconnected, you get that information back to the school, so you can at that point ask for updated.
Okay. So, moving along then, really a communication and then drills and procedures that follow with the communication flowing through those. Our biggest areas of concern really as far as influx of parents and people you don't control and it's somewhat out of, there's a large quantity of people, are your entrance and exits. That's at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. We do have it restricted through certain gates, like for example, and I'll just speak of Monte Vista, we have multiple ways you can get onto that campus through gates. However, in the morning we do restrict it somewhat. There's one on the 36th Street side, and then basically there's two on the Osborne side. We've been on recent development as far as bus drop-offs go. We've moved it from the one side to the other due to the state's issues that they had with us. But in the morning, the key point is we do control it in the sense of time of day. We're very strict with our time of day. Why at Monte Vista do those gates not open, even if parents are standing out there, till 7 o'clock? The reason is once those gates are open at 7 o'clock, I know I've got teachers on duty. If you open the gates and you don't have teachers on duty, if there was an incident with a child or something, there's nobody out there representing the school, so to speak, at that point. So it only makes prudent sense to really control those times and stick to those times, because the entrance and then the exits, because you have people coming onto our site that bringing their children to class. You've got Head Start, you've got a lot of different things going on where people are coming, and exiting is the same thing. You've got people who come on. We do not open the gates and let them until about 10 minutes to 3. We get out at 3:05, somewhere right around 3 o'clock. We try to open the gates. It's a little edgy there, depending on our maintenance crew. But the idea of that is that then, again, we don't have parents coming on when kids might be transferring between classes where we wouldn't have that direct control. So it's a very important part. Dr. Bogdan?
Just clarification.
Yeah.
Most schools, once those gates are open, they're only open for a certain period of time. They're then locked, and it forces all traffic to go through one point of access. We've got a couple areas that we're still working on with that, but that way everybody goes through one point of access where there are people at that point throughout the school hours. So that's something that's been put in place.
And that's where I was heading with this is, once we've got people all onto campus at a given time, for example, in Monte Vista at 7 o'clock, parents can bring their kids. Kids go into the building at 7:30. By 8 o'clock, those gates are all locked back up again, and then parents are only able to come through the office. And so then the office is the only access there. And all gates are locked until the end of the day, and then at the end of the day, the same ones that were open in the morning are opened again, and parents are allowed to come on and get with their kids. Okay, so the entrance and exits taken care of. Then there's the procedures around the basic drills. And all the drills are basic. There are some similarities between all of them, but the idea is we'll just talk about the one you remember when you were a kid, the fire drill. Timing, we try to do timings at different times, trying to pick, we were just discussing how hesitant we are sometimes to do drills during certain times of day. I mean, picking lunchtime is not your favorite time to run a fire drill and have all the kids go out of the cafeteria. But we have to do those things. Fire drill, we have to do drills at awkward times because no plan is good about that. So the timing of them, the communication of the fire drill not only conveys to us, to the authorities, we remember to call if you do a fire drill and you set that alarm off and you don't notify the fire department, they're going to be contacting you real fast if you don't do that. When we pull the alarm, we have called in advance to tell the fire department, this is a drill, we're running a drill, and that way they don't send the fire trucks. And if you have an accidental fire alarm when going off, somebody burned popcorn in the microwave or whatever, you've got only a short period of time. You need to contact those. We assume reality at that point until we verify the inside the structure, which I'll talk about. Anyway, so the communications are with our teachers, between teachers, teachers to office, and accountability for students is when you get exited, we have to make sure we have all students and staff accounted for. So when the kids get out there, my assistant has a procedure in place that she then verifies through all the different grade levels. Have you got all your kids? Nope, I'm missing one. Then if you find her somewhere else, there's a cross-check. That also occurs during lockdown drills. Okay? And so the facility and procedure check at the end of any drill that we do, one, we check to see does the facility work. Are the doors locked? Are the people out of the buildings that are supposed to be? And the procedure checks afterwards would be an evaluation system. What can we do better? We just had a discussion in Monte Vista regarding those folders and what's the speediest way to get that information back and conduct the drill. And we timed the drill, see how fast. That would apply the same thing as if you had a bomb threat or if you had something else. It wouldn't be any different. Questions on that?
When we go back to fire drill, we're always looking for the quickest, safest exit. So we're looking for a 3 to 4 minute exit from the time the fire drill goes off to the time everyone's accounted for. What happens like that?
Question? Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I know this isn't common at all, but if you had a bomb threat, would you be using the same exit procedure as fire drill?
Yeah, I've been at Montevideo for a long time. The closest I've come to a bomb is a hand grenade. But it is the procedure. The procedure is pretty much the same thing. You get people away. It really is. It's a matter of speed and efficiency. If the danger is more imminent, speed is reinforced more. If it's, you try not to make a panic situation on any of these drills. So you try to maintain that. Yet at the same time, and I have been involved in various situations in the district over those 25 years. You know, sometimes the haste is a little push a little more, but in general, keep it calm.
We also have campus evacuation plans, different from fire drill or bomb threat, where you're just trying to get children out of the building, far away from the building. We do have campus evacuation plans. In the last several years, we've only had to use them specifically when we lost electricity and it wasn't coming back on and it was 110 degrees, where we've actually done that. But we do have that level of plan in place.
And that was done at Montevideo with the first day of school. So some of those things do happen on this country. All right, well, the one that brings us to this meeting today is more of the lockdown procedures. The drill, the preparations are the same in some regard, except there have been things done by physical plant services. When we have a lockdown, we don't know how long we're going to be locked down for. Our drills usually consist, it depends, usually 30 minutes, you know, to see that it's real, that's a long time. People will go a little longer, but the preparations for these, you have to have kids, we have buckets set up in the classrooms and blankets so that you have to make a temporary restroom facility, that's what you've got to do. We've got, you know, all the rooms have access to water, so in the past we used to bring water and so forth and store in the room, but that's been kind of a quandary as far as replacement and monitoring and so forth. Really, but the buckets have been utilized and are a critical element of preparation going into a lockdown drill.
Boys K4 really enjoy the bucket.
Yeah, they do. You know, I go to the bed. You know, so so it's fun, you know. But like I said, we all have our war stories to tell about lockdown drills, but those are not for this meeting. Anyway, the times and durations again. You've got to do lockdown drills at different times. I was just discussing today that I had not wanted to do a lockdown drill first thing in the morning because we are just now getting, and even, I say this, I wish I could say this with a full meeting. My parents are totally trained on how to exit and enter our parking lots, but that's not true. But the point is we someday need to do a lockdown drill in the morning, but we have had a site, Mackin, that had a lockdown at the first thing in the morning.
While children were coming out of camp.
So these things have happened. So the times and durations, we try to vary those. Communication and accountability for this are the same communication and accountability for a fire drill, except that it's internal, inside the classroom. For example, based upon your infrastructure at Monte Vista, we rely on email as our primary source of communication of what a lockdown occurs if this is beneficial to you. Once we say, we go over the intercom, we are now in lockdown. That's it. We don't say this is a lockdown drill. We don't say this is, you know, it's we are now in lockdown. And so at that point, the procedures go into place where with the chain of command, we've got people designated to cover different areas to make sure they're done based upon your facility needs. Like each school might be a little different with that regard. But so then at that point, we assure that the campuses, the bathrooms at Monte Vista, we're an older school, so we have to check the restrooms to make sure that they're empty, that the kids are there. If a child is out on the sidewalk and we're doing a lockdown drill, the adults, the teachers, as they're locking their doors, they're looking out on the sidewalk in front of them. If they see a student, theirs or anybody else's, they grab them and pull them in the room. And the PE room goes, they go to the closest room, but at the same time, it's usually the multi-purpose room, just due to the location at Monte Vista. That may not be true. Cafeteria, library, who knows, or a classroom. But anyway, everybody's facility might stretch that a little differently. So then you're locked down. We have people, myself and my assistant and my lead maintenance man. We do some certain checks at Monte Vista due to facility needs, and then we just sit tight. We put a note in the window in the front door. The front door of the office is all locked up. Nobody's allowed on campus. We are under lockdown. That's all we say. And we don't, you don't let people in. My first year of lockdown, this is worth mentioning, my first year of lockdown, we did a lockdown drill. I ran over to the first teacher's door, knocked on the door, she opened. And that was the type of learning we had to do when we first started lockdown drills.
Another one, Mr. Madison. So when I was teaching 8th grade down the road, it wasn't a great neighborhood. I'd say we had a lot of these lockdowns, and I assumed they were real, but they never told us if they were drills or not. We took them very seriously, and I know that a big issue was making sure that our classroom doors were locked from the outside. So I just wanted to, so to that point, do our doors automatically lock from the outside? Is that a challenge we have? Is that something you'll do?
It is a challenge that we have in the sense that different buildings have different needs. For at Monte Vista, it is a concern, and so the doors are checked. See, our door is locked from outside, but currently we're in discussion with getting the authority. The state of Arizona has some fire code rules that seem to conflict with some interpretations we have of lockdown. We just need to talk to people to understand. I don't want to get into that unless you're interested in it, but the point being, at Monte Vista, for example, the teacher has to lock their door from the outside, and so, to click it. Now, once you do that, is it truly locked? Well, that's why, and part of our protocol is Ms. Groves, myself, and my maintenance person, we rattle each door, and because we're on our ways to the bathrooms anyway, to make sure the kids are out of the bathroom, and so we check the door handles of every classroom.
Okay.
And that's what we do currently. Then there's some discussion and things that we talk about. Okay? So anyway, the communication and accountability are the same. Evacuation preparations, they're part of our plan. Every school has a secondary and primary place to go. For example, at Monte Vista, and this is part of the thing we learned way back when we first started doing lockdown drills. If you have to evacuate your students, you need to you may have one way blocked, you may have another way blocked, you need to have multiple ways to move students off the campus. So we have, at Monte Vista, we have Osborne, and we have 36th Street. And so if we go one direction, we've got some schools down there. When we had our evacuation due to the air conditioners, we contacted Gateway. Gateway had us set up. We ate lunch down there. The cafeteria crew brought in our people. They all worked over. And that's really what would happen in a real lockdown is the team effect around here. People would go and would take care of you, and that's what they did. It worked quite well. So anyway, the evacuation preparations are something that we had. And then the evaluation of any drill and procedures, following any of those, we would have sit-downs where we talk about, our teachers are all free to email us, what was the problem you saw, my maintenance, and it's the same at any site, I'm just giving you one of this stuff. My maintenance, myself and my assistant, we go, what problems did we have? Like early days, we had problems communicating because Head Start wasn't on our alarm system for our lockdown. So we had to make sure that we had in the office someone contact Head Start and say, we're under lockdown. We've now had those discussions, and we are part of that. But in the early days, that was not the case. So, questions?
I do have a question. You talked about teachers being able to email you evaluations of drills and also procedures. If there is a teacher who sees something on campus, do they know that they should be, looking out? What's the kind of chain of command, sort of? What do they? Who do they bring that up to? Do they know that they're supposed to do that?
Okay. Just a point of remembrance too, like at Monte Vista, and this is true of our alarm. The teachers also have an emergency button in their room that's right next to their phone that they can push, and it makes a beeping noise in our panel. So that's another layer.
All teachers have this. Every classroom.
I believe that every communications.
We have one of our recommendations when we get to those is that currently Information Systems and Technology has been evaluating all of our intercom systems because even those that are functional are old. We don't have, and I should say physical plant is involved. You can't even get parts for some of them, and so we have bond money that we will be using to upgrade those systems, including the emergency systems within each classroom.
But getting back to your question, it was regarding the communication. What does a teacher do? Teachers, and again, would be similar at any site, but everybody's got a who do you call first and stranger danger alert thing at every site. Usually it's the front office, contact the front office, and after that, it's that chain of command again, who is responsible on site when somebody's gone to contact. It's almost the same as if there's a fight on campus and teachers see two middle school kids out there fighting somewhere. Who are you going to contact? Because some people are, some teachers are more hesitant to jump into the brawl. They want to make sure they get communication before they jump into the brawl. So they will contact. Usually it's direct to the front office. I say email. We do that because we only have so many phones. If we didn't use email, the phones will become overwhelmed. But the phone's always there for emergency use. And then, like I say, and sometimes it's all footwork. When a teacher when we got an injured student on the ground and there's a teacher there, the teacher stays with the student, says, go get the nurse, go get the principal, and they just send them on the fly. I mean, it can be anything. It can range from foot traffic to telephone to email.
Mr. Joe, was your question beyond something that's happening immediately?
Yes.
All sites do have a safety committee, so they can actually report back to that or directly to the principal or administrator.
Okay.
And the district runs a district-level safety committee where they're looking not only at the physical structures themselves, but they talk about safety in the workforce. And so safety is addressed in that way.
Thank you.
And Mr. Madison, at a campus like Biltmore Prep, where we share space and rent space to preschools, what's the coordination amongst those entities?
You're gonna hear from Dr. Bogner on one of the recommendations that needs to be refined more. I'll only speak the one I know of. We have Head Start, and I've already given you one of the examples of a situation when we weren't aware we weren't quite on the same page. An issue that's been ongoing in Monte Vista, and we're working on it, is Head Start parents tend to come onto your campus a lot. During the middle of the day, they might come on campus.
Yeah.
And with offices having minimal coverage at that point, we're going to get some badges on our Head Start people so that we can identify them more easily, the consistent flyers. But I sit down with the Head Start lady each year, the manager who does the three Head Starts in the district, and she'll talk about what are things we can do and what things we can do for them. But really it's a base of communication with them participating in our knowledge of our practices. Fire drills, they come out. Lockdown drills, they lock. Lockdown drills, we check their doors. So they're part of our school in that sense, and we need to enhance our communication.
And the biggest challenge is, as Mr. Madison stated, is with the access to campus, because with preschools, with Head Start, you have access throughout the course of the day, people on and off. Usually that's controlled because most gates are locked and they come into one central location. We have a few areas, though, that we haven't quite worked out all those details, and that's part of the recommendations, to actually sit down with them and make sure we've worked out all of those so that the campus access procedures for the school and for the preschool are aligned. And everybody's on the same page with those.
For example, at Mr. Hanneman's school, his Head Start has a particular gate that they have access to. Particular to at my site, the issue is more of one of their staff itself wanting access to the campus at different times. We've enabled them to have certain locks that they can have access to. So it varies on the site and the physical structure. Any other questions?
So I have maybe it's just a statement, but when we are controlling the traffic through these gates at different points of the day, are we just assuming that danger is going to come through the front door? That's not the way it works in movies, and I don't know what it looks like in real life. But
well, I think what you're seeing when you hear us qualify all our statements with this is what the Sandy Hook thing had. One of the most modern ways that I would think anybody could have, the push button door system and so forth. So we don't want to turn, in my opinion, we do not want to turn our schools into fortresses, into prisons format. So we do the best we can under the situation with the facilities we have, and we're confident. Isolated acts that are out of the bounds of normality are going to challenge anyone. And so I think what we're set up for is responding to those with the structures we have in place, we have an umbrella that it fits into. It may be adjusted, and it may be adjusted on the fly, and that's why they're called emergencies, because sometimes the protocol goes out the window as to haste, speed, and so forth. But I think, like I say, Monte Vista is an older school, but, and you might think, well, geez, Mike, that's kind of a dangerous situation. Actually, we've got some advantages in our older school. Our windows at Monte Vista, if you ever know, I think about this stuff, don't ask me why. You know, our windows are high, they're at the top of the windows. People can't look in those rooms. We have metal doors. You know, those door handles may not open, but they don't open for anybody. So I mean, you know, to me, I'm thinking, you know, this isn't a bad thing. Our block wall, you know, I'm familiar with firearms, you know, it would be a good deterrent. Those are old, those aren't your modern day, you know, block construction with a space in between. They're pretty tough, rugged walls. We're set up pretty good. When you access one wing at Monte Vista, you've got one wing because we have some internal doors, and we're even talking about how can we make those internal doors more difficult to go through. But for someone to exit, they have to exit out into the open, not inside a closed building like Sandy Hook where the person is going down the hallway and those police officers can't see. You've got a wing, you know where they're at. They can't access all these. In schools like Gateway, Papago, and so forth, you're in an internal circle. So I'm proud to say Monte Vista's got some real attributes when it comes to that. It's kind of a rugged old ship, and it'll do pretty well for you.
So these are the important questions I think about that I don't think have been addressed.
Okay.
Like I think it's critically important for our students to learn to feel safe, and for our teachers to do their best work to feel safe. And how does our community feel? I haven't talked to very many parents. The few I've talked to, it's been very positive conversations. Like, you know, they feel our kids are safe. So I'm asking you as a principal, you know, how does your staff feel? How do you feel as a school leader with what we have?
And I think I kind of gave you an indication, but just let's talk about the kids for a minute. 3 of the rules that are common across our district in every site: be responsible, be respectful, and be safe. And so those conversations on what does safe look like? Well, it starts with safety in the playground, safety in your moving across campus and so forth. So safety, the term of being safe with yourself and your body and what you do with it and all those things does come up. Parents, in my experience in the district, these isolated incidents bring it all to the forefront of what are your procedures and so forth. But our parents seem to be more concerned, in my way of thinking, of the bullying, the fighting, my kid's getting beat up on the bus, he's getting beat up coming home from school. Those are, and then what level of is that fight? Is it somebody just punching somebody once and it's a little scuffle? Is it a big blown up fight? Are people going? So I have not had parents approach me saying that Monte Vista is unsafe. What they have approached me on over the years is there's this incident, this situation at Monte Vista that my kid doesn't want to come to school because he is being bullied, because he got beat up. I have not had anyone come to Monte Vista saying it's an unsafe environment in the sense that we're talking about where people are coming. We've had the word on the screen that you saw earlier was volatile. We've got parents who scare parents, or adults, not parents necessarily, and adults on that campus who can scare them because they are not responding in a rational way, whether that's out at the bus stop or the crossing guard or the thing, or they're yelling, they're angry when they come into the school for whatever reason, and that anger, they're going to take it out on your school when they come in. That scares parents. How do you handle that? And Sean was very explicit when he said, yeah, the administrator pulls that person aside, and if we don't get that reaction taken care of, because it is not logical for a person to have that degree of anger, so we do bring in authorities and so on. And I think that if parents see the way those are handled when it occurs, because every time you have a witness to that, you got to make sure you talk. I've had parents get in fights in the parking lot more than I wish, and then and it gets volatile and it's ugly. And so trying to get both parents and to communicate with them the follow-up on those incidents to all the witnesses, and that's including adults on our campus, it's been kind of a thing that's kept it down. And I just have not had that. I don't know, Sean, do you want to add anything to that?
No, Mike's kind of touched on it, but part of the thing at Kennedy and at Gateway that I think has made people feel safe is we're very visible administrators. We're out all the time, we're able to talk to parents. So as soon as something happens, we're talking to the parents right away. So we're giving them a reason to feel secure in the school. And like Mike said, I've had quite a few parents come to the school to talk about what they can do to make the surrounding area more safe, as opposed to making the school.
Yeah.
more
So-
safe. They feel very secure at the school site.
Okay, so like there's all this media, all this attention last year, especially in the last couple, 2 months on weapons. So my sister, who's a police officer in Glendale, sends me this text today. 2 officers shot in 3 days, 4 officer-involved shootings in 5 days. She's scared, and she's a police officer. So I just want to make it, just ask again, like, our schools are viewed as safe places.
At this time, I believe so.
I believe most of our kids, it's the one place in their life, and many of my kids, it is the safest place to have.
So like our teachers aren't scared and they're like, hey, we should get our own weapons just in case.
I have teachers, because of wanted us to set up, for example, I have a young new teacher who's on the end of a wing closest to the road, you know, and she goes, what's the deal being closest to the road? And what I had to assure to her was that, you know, the gate is locked there. It isn't going to make any difference whether you're first in line or whatever if someone comes on campus. The structure there, we have these places, we have cameras, you have a telephone, but it's very unsettling to know that the irrational aspect of any individual can offset that. But so what we can do is just be reassuring, like Sean says, be visible, be available. I still think, for example, myself after this incident when the kids came back the day after that incident, when I know I was out greeting kids outside on the playground just to see and just make sure they know. But I would go back and I would confidently say that I think in the majority of our kids, the safest place they feel in many cases for that length of time is at school.
Okay.
I'm curious too, do you feel like the schools that do have SROs, do they feel like they're safer than families, the kids, the administrators, the teachers? Do they, I know it's a...
I know parents outside of the school utilize the SRO. So I would say that they feel comfortable talking to them. I don't know, when you drive by a school and you see a police car, you slow down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other end of that thing, Columbine, there was a person on that campus with a gun loaded that was there for that safety reasons.
But since the incidents have happened, I've had no teachers come and say, I would like to carry a weapon on campus. I've had several come and say, Sean, can you get a bulletproof vest because you're dealing with these guns. You're sometimes the first line of defense, and beyond our words and the training that I've had while I was in the Coast Guard, you know, I'm not sure if someone pulled a weapon, what my next step would be, besides what my first thought might be, which is to take this person down. But you're dealing with that on a daily basis, no matter where you are, no matter what school you're at. And Carl, your question about do we, by putting in one point of access, do we think they're going to come through there? Probably they won't. But we're setting it up so that if someone comes any other way, we're observant enough to know that, hey, that person shouldn't be here. So multiple people around our campus are calling the front office and saying, it's part of the reasons that parents want to go to uniforms at Kennedy. They wanted to know when someone was on campus that should not be there. So if we saw someone not in a uniform that we did not realize or recognize who they were, I got a call immediately that someone's on our campus that should not be there.
Okay.
Can I give a little story of something that happened a couple of years ago on Loma Linda campus that might put a little to rest if this is still going on with the principals. I think it was about 2004. I don't know if Susan's still here, but she was the principal of Loma Linda at the time. Maybe 2006, and I was working on a mural there, a ceramic tile mural, and I only live 2 blocks away. So I was coming and going and coming and going, and I was kind of sneaking in from the Fairmount way instead of going all the way around, because I thought, well, you know, it's neat, and I can. And at one point, and I know Susan had met me a couple times, but at one point she just came up to me, and I went, hi, and she went, where's your badge? You know, and it just like, it made me feel a little bit irked at the moment, but then I started to think, and I thought, this is great, you know, this is great that they, even though she knew me, or maybe she forgot me that moment, but even though it just made me feel like, you know, they're really cracking down. They want to know who's on the campus and why. And even though I have a friendly face, a non-threatening face, she still was asking. So So if that practice is still going on, then I feel like perhaps.
Well, one thing I'd add, just in my experience with the district, actually, if I reflect back on my 25 years, there were more guns taken away from students back then at a rate for a short period of time there when I first came down to Creighton 25 years ago than there has been in the last few years. It was actually a little bit more, I won't use the word common, but there were more incidents of that nature then than there are now, because it wasn't such a blatant, it was like we didn't make the publicize the rules, and the board themselves in those transition years making those, if you bring a weapon on campus, a deadly weapon on campus in Creighton District, the board has supported historically, you will be expelled. And that's been followed through. There's a lot of examples of that.
20 years ago, I hate to admit this, 20 years ago when I worked at Kennedy, there were more incidents more incidents of weapons on campus at that time than in the 6 years that I was there.
I think that's something you need to
If I could just add something in terms of the question of safety and how people feel, and really getting to that takes a little bit more research. But I think for children, it's the adults, particularly their classroom teacher, that makes them feel safe. And for the teachers, are those procedures in place? Do we know what we have to do? Their trust in their administration and that those things are in place. So it really comes down to, there are a lot of adults on our campuses. We have, in some cases, 50, 60 adults on a campus. And I think those relationships and that trust that gets built has a big role in terms of whether people are feeling safe on those campuses or not. And so I think we have to keep that in mind. That's why we have procedures and drills. Understanding that we have to put a lot of this on paper, which really doesn't mean much if something breaks loose, if something happens. What is effective is drilling, is practicing, is going through and understanding how you're going to react if certain things happen. And that's really important. So that people have, because as both Sean and Mike have stated, in a real emergency, it always doesn't go like a drill. But you have a set of processes that you follow and you think through and you go into that thinking mode, and then you can adjust from there. And so it's really important that as Mike goes through and talks about drills and procedures, that we understand that it's about trying to get as automatic on some of these things as we possibly can. So rather than go into panic when something happens, we go into process.
And I think, and I'll conclude my statement on this now, but the part where I referred to where my parents mentioned the word safety, it's in reference to kids with being bullied, fighting, or something like that. That's undoubtedly the most common. But at the same time, I think at Monte Vista, the safety factor for those parents is when they're assured. That's why when you guys as new board members, you're going to see suspension forms come across your desk. Older members know this. And my teachers have to remember, and we all have to remember, that we are talking about 2% of our district population that might be causing the vast majority of the issues that we see. So is my school safe? Is Sean's school safe? You bet. We got some problems with kids that are going to cause a little problem for a few kids. You bet. But it's a pretty small percentage of kids, and that's really where the vast majority of my 25 years have been spent. With the other 98%, and then too much time sometimes spent with those kids that are acceptable. We handle them, the board supports us, and we move on. Anyway.
I have another question. So our elected state leaders have all these ideas on how to make our communities more safe. Our county sheriff has proposed arming volunteers and sending them not to our schools but in our communities. And I know how my wife and I feel about that, and I know how my neighbors feel about that. But before I share that, and I'm not sure if it's obvious, but is that something you all look to as a positive addition to our community? And maybe this is a question for our board president, but is there anything we can do to either encourage that or prevent that?
I'm gonna let my silence be clue as to whether I support it or not. I feel comfortable having an SRO because I have a close relationship with an SRO. He's a trained professional on our campus, working with law-related education most parts. Beyond that, I don't know enough about it to say I would support anybody being on the campus.
And I go, Sean hit the words, a lot of it has to do also, relationship helps, but the training and so on. I mean, there's talks of, I've been around weapons my entire life, but when I was a little kid, but that doesn't mean I have the training and the regularity of the training necessary. So before I feel comfortable with anyone, I want to know their level of expertise. I want to know about them. I want to know what their what their motivations are, what are their training background, ongoing training, all those things before I don't have an SRO experience because we've never had one at Monte Vista, so I've had to handle things a little differently there over the years.
Yeah.
But overall, without knowledge of who the people are, that's a scary proposition to me. So.
And if there's something the board wants to do to address that, that can certainly be added as a agenda.
I don't know that the sheriff has announced where he's plans to have volunteers or how many or to what extent. But I definitely think we should keep it on our radar since he has had presence in our neighborhoods in the past, and it has
Been a very
brought
negative presence.
conflict. Right, it has brought a lot of conflict.
And I think,
Fear.
I do think that the sheriff's intent is probably to keep kids from coming to school, to make people scared, because that is what he thrives upon, and I don't have a problem with saying that. And I know that one of the closest links to academic achievement, and I've learned, is safety, but is also having kids there and having teachers there. If the kids aren't in school learning, they're not going. That's one of the reasons why having that attendance rate is part of our I guess, I don't know if it's our letter grades, but definitely our AYP. Maybe I have that backwards, but we have to have kids coming to school. We can't have kids who are scared to come.
Mr. Jewett, you kind of hit the nail on the head though when I think about it. The day after Sandy Hook happened, so it happened on a Friday, I believe, and then I was really concerned about the attendance rate at our school the next day. And it was as high as it always is, so parents automatically felt that school was a safe place for their children. So they were back in droves the next day.
And I also just want to state I don't think it's a good idea for other people in the community. If they want to get people riled up and have confrontations between different people who feel strongly about an issue, okay, can you please do that not in front of our school? Just a request.
Okay, so as we've done reviews of campus security and our current emergency plans, there are recommendations that we're bringing forward to ensure all campuses can be locked down in order to funnel access to a single control point during school hours. This goes back to Carl's comment. That single point of access is not only to keep people in, but to keep our students safe, or to keep people out. It's to keep our students safe. It's if parents and students are supposed to be going to a specific location or access point and somebody is seen coming through another, it's an obvious red flag to any one of the staff members that that person shouldn't be over there. To review all of our main entrances, utilizing trained security personnel to assist us to make recommendations regarding options for increasing safety and controlling access, especially in some of our front offices and front access areas of our schools. Continue to evaluate and upgrade the site emergency notification equipment such as intercom systems, radio systems, telephone systems, fire and security alarm systems, and so forth. Continue to upgrade and evaluate placement of our security cameras and lighting to support. To do campus or to possibly implement campus evacuation drills. Actually evacuate a campus to another campus during a drill. And again, as Mike and Sean were saying, we have primary and secondary locations for the evacuation of every campus, just in case something's going on where the evacuation will take you through a more dangerous zone. To continue, vary our times to conduct all drills to include during arrival, lunchtime, and and departure. They become very chaotic at times, such as when Mackin actually had the true lockdown a couple years ago. It also got the community involved because the parents walking their kids to school ran into the situation where they could not get their kids to school because we were in a lockdown situation protecting the staff and students that were inside the campus. And to modify our chain of command system that we currently use to the incident command structure or incident command system that is required by federal, state, and local law. What this provides us is a common language between our emergency plan and the terminology that our staff and administration uses and the incident command structure that DPS fire comes on board with in a real-life situation. To require online training, and this is part of the incident command structure requiring online training for all members of the incident command teams. It is provided online by the Department of Emergency and Military Affairs. To continue to provide staff members training on their site's emergency response plan, and then coordinate with Head Start and preschool programs to ensure aligned parent-school access and procedures, to ensure that during a lockdown they're fully involved, during the training they're fully involved, so that they're not only their staff and students, but that their parents are fully aware of the programs and the drills that we're doing as well. To continue to coordinate training with outside command and control organizations annually, such as the local police and fire department. And to use the emergency response plan checklist, which is provided by the Department of Emergency Services and Military Affairs, to review all of our plans annually and to ensure that the accountability of our procedures are in place.
I noticed that most of the recommendations are in the purview of the sites or the administration. It's not really something that the governing board that's in our purview. Is there something we can do to support what the sites and the admin is doing?
Professionally, you guys being aware, being out there, seeing what we're doing, supporting the evacuation drills, supporting the fire drills, supporting those parents and staff members who are bringing forth ideas, questions, that is a huge piece of supporting how we're moving forward.
The first Arizona Revised Statute citation, that is the governing board's responsibility.
Where was that?
That if you look on, I believe it was the first page presentation, it's ARS 15, at ARS 15.3. 341A32, that falls under the responsibilities of, from a legal perspective, having these plans, having these procedures in place, making sure that those are in place, and having this kind of a meeting is a big part of what the governing board is required to do legally.
Okay.
So that's why we included that particular citation, because that falls under the roles and responsibilities of the governing board.
I would ask just for your patience when it happens, because it will happen. When we do these drills and they inconvenience parents and they make parents angry when they're locked down at the arrival time and dismissal time, and they're going to call the board members, that you remember our conversation tonight, that we do those things for the sake of them. Not all parents understand that or appreciative of our funny timings on drills and so forth. So that's just one personally from us. I would love you to keep that in mind as because we're going to increase, the intensity of these drills when we do that.
And as another example of that would be as we continue to have a conversation regarding campus evacuation drills. That's a big deal. That's at least a half-day process to run a drill at a site where you're taking 800 students off of one campus, putting them on another campus, and doing all of those procedures. So that will also test many people's patience as we move forward with that consideration.
And one of the largest parts of this is education and communication. I mean, always that's the biggest piece in educating our parents on what we're doing, such as in the instance of a campus evacuation, and the kids can't come back to that school, the parents, we've got to be able to notify and educate our parents as to where they're going to go get their kids, how they're going to process that. At the same time that campus that now has a whole other site students, they're trying to get their students home as well. So those are the practices that we really have to communicate with our community. We really have to communicate with our parents so that they know that we're trying to do this in a safe manner, but at the same time, that it's really something that we have to do to ensure that we know how to do it safely.
And just one comment, one observation, I'm grateful that we have our bond in place because there's not a lot of capital funding coming in to this district right now. And in spite of all of the public conversation that we've heard about SROs, about other ways of finding ways of doing something similar, of having armed guards, whether we pay for it or not, I know that it was either ASBA or NSBA, I think the National School Boards Association, one of the conferences I went to a few years ago, I did attend a session on school safety and how you plan your campuses and the sight lines that you want to have so that you can see who's coming and when. And some of our schools, well, it's great that Mr. Madison in Monte Vista was built, I think, 1948, and so 65 years. They may have built it very solidly back then, but probably were not, didn't have quite the same, headlines. Their security concerns were probably that some communists were going to infiltrate somehow. So times change, and our schools may have to as well.
There's drills under desk.
Yeah, actually, yes, I have a colleague at work who grew up in that neighborhood, and they had evacuation drills where they would get into a random parent's station wagon and drive out to the desert, which we would never do today. So anyway, that was in the 50s. So, any other questions? Thank you. Yes, oh, and we do have, yes, come on forward. We have a way forward. If you would please state your name and address.
Yes, hello, my name is Nokatula Ngwenyama. I need to give you my full address.
If you wish, just, yeah, yes.
I do? Okay, 4626 North 40th Street, Phoenix, Arizona, 85018.
Thanks.
Mr. President, Governing Board, and everyone who presented tonight, thank you so much, and for the work that you're doing on these issues. I understand that safety is a big concern, and I'm actually relieved to have heard this presentation. I feel a lot better about the issue of SROs, etc. Just to speak about exit and entrance protocols, I'm a parent of a Biltmore Prep student, and I'm hoping that some of the works in project will be looking at the points of access on that particular campus. I also teach violin, and I'm one of many teachers who do enrichment programs at Biltmore Prep. And while I teach, because I teach for 2 hours on Wednesday afternoons, and the students that I teach are really my their safety is my responsibility. Not only, trying to get them to play the violin, but their safety is my responsibility. And if something were to happen, I don't know exactly what I need to do. So for people who are involved in enrichment programs on campuses, I'd like to at least have a sheet or have some sort of idea of a protocol. What do I do? I mean, if there's a fire drill, I assume I'd bring them out to the field, but apart from that, I really don't know what to do. So I would like for those issues to be addressed as well. But thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and I'm really glad that I got to come to this meeting.
Thank you. And we will move on to item 10A, which is approval of establishing an advisory